We're live. Welcome.
Super smooth.
Sorry, we've been having a few technical issues. Meant to go live at 5:30. We're a few minutes late. And so I'm Tarquin, founder of TARQUIN'S Gin. Joined here with Mark Ramage on my left, your right-hand side, our longest-serving employee and head of sales. And against my better judgment, well, we got a really exciting release, announcement, news story today. But against my better judgment, I'm passing TARQUIN'S Insta Live over to Mike on my right-hand side, your left-hand side, from BinTwo to discuss this, the missing link. And over to Mike.
Fantastic. Power at last. Hello, I'm Mike from BinTwo. BinTwo's a wine merchant and wine bar right here in the heart of Padstow. And as Tarquin said, we're here to talk about our brand new gin collaboration that Tarquin and his team have made for us. The Missing Link, an Old Tom style gin, which we'll be nattering about today. We've got a really long history with Tarquin. I think we were one of your first stockists. We're definitely in the early adopter category. And I remember being in the shop when you first came in with your gin, and we were like, oh, that's really nice. It's a lovely product, and that's nice to have a Cornish option. And it's like, some people would go for that. And then we'd still place our order for masses of Tanqueray 10, which was our house gin at the time. And none of us saw the boom of the gin craze coming. And you were right at the head of it all. So I know your followers have probably heard this story many times before. Mine may not have done. So how did it all start? How did TARQUIN'S all kick off? What made you see this opportunity?
So I'll try and give you the lightning fast. I know we've got some important business to get onto with the missing link. So I'll give you the sort of intense snapshot of how, at the tender age of 24, 23, I left a desk job. And I was living in London, working in a desk job, and I had this dream on paper that I could move and live by the sea, make a few bottles of gin in the morning and go surfing in the afternoon. So that was the idea on paper. Moved back to the West Country, and that's pretty much what I did. It took me about a year. I worked on a tiny little 0.7 litre still on my cooker at home, distilling hundreds of different batches of botanicals with vodka that I bought in the local cash and carry. I think Chekhov vodka in magnums I used to buy. Distill that, and then slowly build this amazing repertoire of flavours and start blending different ingredients. And then, with a little bit of luck, a little bit of magic and trial and error, scaled up to a 250 litre still. We're still on the same site 8 years later, in this converted old cattle shed, just a few miles outside Padstow. That's where first bottles came off the still in 2013, July. Saw the first bottles out of the boot of my car, and BinTwo in Padstow is one of our first customers. And that's my story in a nutshell. And Mark joined me on this crazy journey. Another sort of I don't know. Yeah, he was keen to hop on board.
Eye candy, wasn't it? I mean, everyone needs eye candy.
Originally, but it's dropped off now.
But yeah, the idea was definitely just to make something. I love the idea of making something tangible, and also to be creative. So the beauty about gin is it's a pure expression of flavour, and so long as the legal definition is, so long as its predominant flavour is juniper, you can add in whatever you want, any botanical fruit, herb, plant or spice to put your stamp on this product, to make it taste completely different to everything else. And for me, I love the idea to be able to taste, touch and actually enjoy the product that I was going to sell. So it's kind of, that was the dream, and to be able to live by the sea and do it was even better. So that's the condensed version. There's a lot of struggles, trial and error, mistakes along the way. But I think luck has been on our side. I've had Mark on my side as well. His nickname is Luck. I was going to say the cheesy jokes for Mike, but
I got far better jokes about Mark. But,
I jump in there first. But that's kind of it, Mike.
And it was incredible, and in a small way, it was really lovely being part of that. And I don't think any of us saw the explosive growth coming, and it was the course of a few short months before your gin was the mainstay in the shop, and I remember we literally were in a position where you couldn't make it quick enough to resupply because it was shooting at. And I think what I've really enjoyed about watching TARQUIN'S grow is the way you've done it. You've not lost your, so risk of this being a love-a-thon, but you've not lost your identity along the way. And until recently, it was still your dad popping in to make the deliveries with his little handwritten delivery note, and we'd have a bit of a natter with your dad.
Carbon copy paper.
Yeah.
Pressing down.
And I think it's been a really respectful growth, and that sort of brings us to the story of Old Tom, really, because I think when you said about setting up your gin school and gin shop right here in the heart of town, which you probably can't see very clearly because but yeah, hopefully you'll get a sense. We're in TARQUIN'S newly launched gin school this year, and I really like the fact that when you were advancing with that, you kind of sounded us out about how we felt about it, and hey, look, we're going to be doing this thing. Obviously, it's right across the road. I hope that's going to be all right. And you didn't need to do that, and it was very decent of you. And naturally, what I did was shamelessly leverage it for a gin collaboration that I've been badgering about for years. So just to stop everybody getting on the phone trying to do a collaboration with TARQUIN. This was a special thing to mark TARQUIN'S arrival in town, and it's just a really cool thing.
Lobbied for months.
I did lobby for months. It was shameless, and I used every angle feasible. Nothing was too low, frankly, but we got there in the end. So tell us a bit. I mean, a lot of people might not be familiar with an Old Tom style of gin. As soon as it was mentioned to me, I knew that's what we wanted to do. So tell us a bit about what an Old Tom is.
So I'm going to try and get my facts right here, and I apologise in advance if my dates are a little bit wonky. So Old Tom is pretty much the gin that Brits were drinking back in the gin craze in the mid-18th century. So brief history of gin. It started in the Netherlands, pretty much the modern day gin as we know it today. Came to Britain with William of Orange, William III of England. And we're really talking about the 1700s here, where it was this sort of spontaneous moment where brandy imports, which were pretty much the spirit that we drank, there was a tax levied on those. So gin became the thing to drink, and it was cheap as chips. Gin was cheaper than beer. People were drinking gin left, right and centre, and there were hundreds, if not thousands, of illicit sort of gin distillery bootleggers all across London and other cities across England. And what they drank isn't quite what London Dry or Cornish Dry gin is known today, because they weren't really capable of, they didn't have the stills, they didn't have the equipment to make what we're familiar with, but isn't quite what the Dutch invented either. So the Dutch were drinking something called Geneva or Heneva. It's kind of distilled with a malt spirit, malted barley. It would be much more familiar if you almost mix gin and whiskey today. That's kind of...
It's making me thirsty. Can you pour a shot?
That's probably like a layman's terms of what that tastes like. So the Old Tom is a halfway house. So it's called the Missing Link. So it's not as dry as London Dry or Cornish Dry gin, but it's not as sweet as a Geneva. It's a halfway house, but what is fantastic about it is that it's really botanically rich. It's got really intense flavour. And so what we've created today is we've used some really beautifully aromatic spices, things like star anise, things like cloves and cinnamon and nutmeg. We've added them to the traditional 12 botanicals that we use in our Cornish Dry gin. And then we've increased the intensity to make it super botanically rich. And an Old Tom gin is intense, and that's why it works really beautifully well in some classic cocktails. And then we've actually sweetened it with a touch of Cornish wildflower honey. And this is from some honey makers just up the road. And about 4 years ago, I was still driving to collect it. It's just outside Polzeath. And these bees, they fly across, they've got the best environment, probably in the country. They're harvesting, the flowers around Polzeath, around Rock, and St Minvern. You couldn't ask for anything better. So this produces a very slightly sweet, aromatically intense, botanically rich Old Tom gin. It's the first one we've ever made. And really, we're looking to recreate that gin craze back from the mid-18th century.
There's almost something illicit, isn't
it?
it? Yeah, there's also something illicit, isn't it?
More fantastic at the same. It's supposed to be. They were drinking gin, which was cut with sulfuric acid and turpentine. Yeah. So we're trying to.
I'm not averse to that. That sounds good. That sounds good for margins.
So we're looking to recreate the sort of it's not quite romance because there's so much, so much going on in that gin craze, and 1751 Gin Act, and it's sort of the famous painting of Gin Lane, and it was such a crazy time in British history, and we're trying to recreate that, and invoke that sort of memory sense of flavour with such a rich and intense and powerful gin.
And there's
an emotive gin, I think. That's
it is. What I loved about it when we first started speaking about what we do is I really wanted to do something that was different and a bit of a landmark gin. And there's a story of the Old Tom and why it's called Old Tom, isn't it? So you've spoken about the Gin Act, where gin was banned because Britain had become hugely unproductive, and it was all blamed on gin. Much like 2020, frankly. Never was more gin drunk. But so it was illegal to sell it, and so the legend goes. I know there are a number of different legends, aren't there? But so the legend goes that gin houses that were still selling it illicitly would have a plaque of a black cat outside the premises to mark that they sold it. And then if you're out in the street, you'd put your coin through a slot, and then gin would be dispensed through a little spout underneath the black cat. Into a glass if you were posh, or straight into your mouth if you were just drunk in the alleyway.
And
So
there's an anecdote. I don't know. You probably know it because your history sounds a lot sharper than mine is actually. But I know there's an anecdote where "spend a penny." Do you know that expression? Is literally related to the Gin Act and the illicit boozers. So they're literally put in their penny, their cash, and then they get that gin shot in return. So that's where the story. That's where the expression "spend a penny" came from.
So I think when we were first knocking up different combinations, Mark, we hit on the fact that it's just really nice as a sipping gin, didn't we?
I think I remember you coming over and saying that we wanted to do something different, didn't we? That was one of the things, and I think at TARQUIN'S we always do we never want to do things that it's been done before. Hence you came over and we were like, look, we're going to make a gin together. Let's collab. Let's do something fun, and let's do something completely different. And Old Tom's is something that I've been in. I've got a sweeter palate in terms of the gin style. I always remember when I was younger, I used to drink an Old Tom style of gin, and I really enjoyed it. And we brought it up together, and that's something that we wanted to go towards, wasn't it? And I think it's worked really well, and it's really versatile. We're drinking it neat with a bit of ice, just to kind of dilute it and release the tannics a little bit more.
Yeah.
We tried variants, didn't we? We did a Death or Glory one where we added we asked Tarquin to add bump it up a bit. Was maybe the
ramp it up, Tarquin. It's not enough.
it didn't
give it the beans, Tarquin. Yeah.
And then we were like, oh dear, gone too far.
But you can see, or hopefully you can see. So you're actually getting a little bit of a louche on this. So it's bottled at a higher ABV. We've got 47% in the bottle, which again, I think it just invokes that kind of that slightly illicit feeling. It's and it also makes incredible cocktails. I think the Martinez is one of the most classic, 100-year-old cocktail recipe for that. You find it in the earliest Savoy cocktail books. And this is the gin that they use. They use an Old Tom, and so this is the one to use if you're ever going to make a Martinez, or things like a Tom Collins as well. I think Tom is in the name, so I'm assuming they went hand in hand. But yeah, so pretty much neat with a little bit of ice. It will louche, and that's purely a sign of the intensity of botanicals. And of course, we use lots of fresh citrus fruit as well. So you're going to get some of those slightly more volatile oils, which are actually soluble in ethanol, but not in water. So you're getting that kind of that mild cloudiness in the glass. But it's only a good sign. It means the flavour. We cranked it up, but we didn't go too far. I think it's still nicely balanced as well.
And that's what I've loved about this project. There's a lot of collaborations that we do. I always want to make sure that we produce the best product we can, and that's the central drive. And I remember when we saw the louche on it, we thought, are people going to like that? But will people want their gin to be clear? And we're like, well, which tastes the best? Which is the better product? And we were convinced that it was the one with the slight louche, so that's why we went with it. And it probably looks like a really geeky thing to be drinking on its own, and no one's ever going to do that. It's always going to be in G&T. But genuinely, this is how I enjoy it at home. I'll have it neat over ice, just a little slice of orange in it, and I treat it like a sipping gin quite often at home. And it's I really love it. It's really really pronounced juniper and the winter orange. The orange comes through, and it's really pronounced.
I think the touch of honey adds that, almost like you don't really get that honey flavour, but adds almost like a thickness to it as well, which I think is
Yeah,
really
lovely.
cool.
Yeah, really nice. Exactly that sort of texture. It's thicker. It's quite soft. You almost get almost floral notes from the honey. It feels sort of lightly aromatic, even with those intense spices, things like star anise and nutmeg. It's sort of completely balanced by that soft, beautiful sort of sweet honey. And at 47%, you wouldn't even know that. It's kind of
really
makes
smooth,
such
really
a cracking
smooth.
martini, or served on the rocks like we're drinking today.
Yeah. So I think there was a moment when we were meeting and we were talking about making this Old Tom gin, and I was already sold. I was already convinced. And then Mark said, "We could make a hot gin and tonic out of it." And I was like, "What are you on about? What are you saying?" That's the next serve you're going to make up for us, isn't it, Mark? So just while you get your act together with that, I've mentioned we're here in your gin school, and again, for a lot of people who've not managed to make it down here yet, they may not be aware of your plans. So tell us a bit more about gin school, what that's all about, and what the plans are here.
So we're in Padstow, just off the harbour, almost opposite BinTwo, and this year, so in July, we opened up TARQUIN'S Gin School and Shop. So we've got 12 little mini copper pot stills, not 3 litres in size, so a little bit bigger than what I started with back in 2012. But really we're looking to recreate that same journey of recipe exploration that I started out on my cooker at home. So that's very much the vibe of what we're doing. And so you can do, when I started, I used to buy anything I could off the internet. I used to pick anything I could get my hands on. And it was that experimentation which really led me to where Tarquin has ended up today. So we do this really fun thing called BYOB, which is bring your own botanical. So you can literally bring anything that you want, and provided that it's not poisonous, it's not illegal. We've had some odd requests so far. Provided that it takes,
I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry.
Provided that it sort of takes the key criteria for us, you can throw it in the pot still and have a go at creating your unique gin. And I don't think anyone else does that, and that is what appealed to me as a distiller, of that complete creativity and blank canvas, of being able to create whatever you want. And that's I think that freedom is really special in the creation of gin, and that's what keeps me passionate and really enthusiastic about what I do. 8 years on today.
How do you stop the car crashes? Do you give a little bit of gentle guidance if someone's come up with something that's going to be an absolute car crash? Do you gently sort of slide in there and just give a corrective?
I think so. What I've done is I've sort of, to make sure people make stuff which actually tastes nice, I've given snippets of the secret recipe within bands. So if you want to know how much juniper to put in your gin, I'll tell you within the nearest 10 grams. And if you want to know how much anise, I'll tell you within the nearest gram. And so it's you can build up a pretty incredible recipe with the guidance and notes that we give you, and it should taste nice, or if not incredible.
You get into Tarquin's vocab as well. I remember we did the gin school here, and he comes over, and if you've got some botanicals and he says it's interesting, that's
the same in the wine world. If someone says, "Oh, interesting,"
wow.
is that good interesting?
Right, I'm ready to go on this drink.
Oh, excellent! Knock us out. So talk us through the insanity that is a hot gin and tonic.
Hot G&T. So I went to a Christmas market in London. God, man, it's maybe 4 years ago, and there was another one of our there's another competitor of ours, and they were doing hot G&Ts. I know, but the good thing about it, I thought it was super interesting, but their execution wasn't that good. So I thought, we can do better here. This is what we're going to do.
We can do
Alright, so we're going to do it.
We can take their idea and polish it,
yeah, we can make
and sell it as our own. I'll be able to sell it to Mike from BinTwo.
Yeah. But I used to do, again, when I used to work in a bar, we used to make, I think it's the first time I was chatting to you as well, before I was working here, we used to make our own tonic syrups. And that's what we're going to use in this. It's super easy. So you can get this. This is one I really like. It's Bermondsey tonic syrup. It's a really cool company. There's a bunch of them. Just look up any kind of tonic syrup.
No. Look up Bermondsey tonic syrup on the BinTwo website.
Oh, you're
www.bin2.com, because obviously
it's the only one available.
Yeah, well, Bermondsey plays into the London narrative. You can't go and get something else, can you, Mark?
Well, no,
Bermondsey.
I was just testing your notes.
Hopeless. Head of sales, you say, yeah?
I can work for these guys. Okay, so tonic water syrup is basically tonic water, and they've made it into like a cordial. And that means you can use it in these kind of things as a hot G&T. I love a hot toddy, usually associated with whiskey or rum, that type of thing. Gin, it doesn't often kind of work with it, but this works really well. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 25ml of this tonic syrup. I haven't made drinks for a long time, so excuse my shaking hands.
So I've had this recently, and it is pretty incredible. And I'm a big fan of mulled wine and hot cider, and I think this just elevates the hot winter. I think it's the drink of winter 2020. So we've still got a few months. We had December, January, February, March. I think we've got 3 months left of drinking hot Old Tom and tonics. I mean, or maybe 4 months. I don't know. I reckon.
I don't know. I'm making good headway with this just instead of morning tea, frankly.
In that I put 12.5ml of lemon juice. You can actually use orange juice as well in that, but I've got orange in the next drink, so let's stop that.
Mixing it up.
Yeah. We're going to do a big slug of the Old Tom, so we're going to do 50ml in this.
So this is the Old Tom. Available also on
www.bin2.com.
You should have worn a t-shirt.
And this is actually one of our rarest and most exclusive limited editions that we make. So I know some of you might know we've been doing Thirsty Thursdays where we sell them on our online shop, but this is not available there. This is only and exclusively available through the fantastic little wine and champagne bar on the harbour in Padstow on the Drang. And that is BinTwo.com.
Definitely bin2.com.
You got the good domain.
And I've just topped this up with hot water as well. Okay, and then we're just going to garnish it with some orange, which is always really nice.
Fantastic.
And then we're going to smash in a cinnamon stick as well.
Amazing. So I actually can't, I'm actually already excited, looking forward to having this.
Well, it's a sort of thing that sounds like a novelty, doesn't it? It's a big eye roll, sounds like a novelty, but it is genuinely delicious. And there's something about it, like you say, we sell loads of mulled wine, and I'm going to confess, not a fan of mulled wine. It's it's a bit of a travesty, if I'm perfectly honest. So this for me is perfect because it's a hot toddy alcoholic beverage that I can sell with a straight face, saying that's a genuinely good drink. That's a genuinely good representative of a.
I've made two.
Cheers.
Again, you can make this. Like I said, orange juice is really good, or like clementine juice is really good. You could add in some. I put cinnamon stick, but some dry cinnamon loblin is really good as well. I found the one that we had in London, it didn't have this tonic syrup in. It turns out a bit like wishy-washy. So you add that in, and it works for me. I think it's really good.
So it's got that amazing. I think it's the bitterness which you miss in something like a mulled wine or a hot cider. And if you're like me, which I think a lot of gin drinkers are, and you love that bitterness that juniper brings, or that bitterness that you get in the tonic, the cinchona bark, that's what that amazing tonic syrup adds, and it creates something which is actually super, super easy to make. I mean, Mark just did that in 10, 15 seconds. And it just raises the hot game, and you're drinking gin.
It really does, and I remember the first time I tasted it. I've seen this reaction with everyone who's tried it at Bin2. There's an initial kind of jolt when people make the mental adjustment that I'm drinking something that tastes like a gin and tonic, but it's hot, and it genuinely does taste. I know it sounds bizarre. It genuinely does taste like a hot gin and tonic, and there's something sort of warming and medicinal about it, isn't there? That sort of it's just good for you. It's good for you kids.
I drink at Christmas. Like I drink hot toddies all day long, and this is such a good kind of, and it works so well with the Old Tom because you've got those increased flavours and you've got that great texture of the gin. And
I really love the Bermondsey tonic syrup because although we've used it here in this drink, you can use it, dilute it down with soda water, and make tonics of your own choosing. So you can mix the sort of flavour of the tonic to something that you prefer and play around with it in cocktails. I've been playing with it all summer.
We missed it with a highball, didn't we? One of my original ideas was to make this instead of like a G&T, was to do it as a highball serve, just with soda water, because I just thought it was really cool. But, alas.
We'll come on to a highball in a minute because I think having waxed lyrical about the virtue of the gin as a neat gin, I think probably have to be realistic and accept a lot of people like a long drink, don't they? They're going to listen to that and go, that's all fine, I want to make a long drink. So Mark's going to knock us up a highball because I think we're going to assume that you can make a G&T. You know how to make a G&T. This makes an awesome gin and tonic. We've been selling loads of them over the summer across the way, so we've been talking up its winter credentials. hold the bottle. We've been talking up its winter credentials, but it's been making absolutely stunning G&Ts all summer. We've got some dried blood orange that we use in it, so we just serve it with a straight tonic, not a flavoured tonic at all, ice, gin, and this dried blood orange, and that dried blood orange rehydrates and it boosts and amplifies the orange notes in there again. I might also know a shop where you can get hold of dried blood orange, www.bin2.com. So Mark's going to make us up a highball serve, and I know we deliberated, didn't we, about whether to touch on 2020. It's been highs, and this summer was a great atmosphere in Cornwall, wasn't it? And there's a real buzz about town, and it was in that context that you launched your new venture here. Were there any other sort of high points of 2020? Anything that you think you'll take away from it that you think that's an improvement, and we're going to carry on with that now?
I think it's it's been really nice to get close to our customers, our suppliers, and it's really in these tough times that people do pull together, and really focus on those relationships which are really really good, and you're keen to sort of nurture. It's fun to do these sort of online adventures. So this was definitely this is a 2020 thing that we're doing right now. We're on Insta Live. I don't think we did anything like that last year, and it's really fun. It's quite fun to show a little bit more behind the scenes stuff. Stuff that we are real people living down here. On the far flung coast of North Cornwall. Trying to do some pretty cool stuff within the gin and wine space, and working hard. We're sort of we're real people. Just working hard to doing stuff that we love, and I think it's very rare to get that behind the scenes glimpse on things like Instagram and social media. I think it's a whole new medium to be able to communicate. And it's been it's not just for us. It's amazing for I'm sure it's for us to see other brands and other anything that you're interested in. I think you've got to learn a bit more about.
I think with you all the way, and we had the same experience at BinTwo, that it sort of strengthened connections with some of our customers, and the wine world has certainly changed as well, with much more becoming available online through this sort of medium, that previously, unless you were in the know and unless you had contacts, you couldn't get there. So switched on winemakers around the world have opened up their, they haven't got visitors anymore, so they found ways of opening it up in a way that you could never really experience it unless you put the trip into South Africa or Burgundy or wherever. And I don't think that will ever change. I think that strength of connection directly with customers is with us for good, and I think that's a tremendous thing.
Definitely. And I think for those of you who don't know, there's actually, if you want some really good Twitter content, for those of you who are on Twitter,
BinTwo. Oh, sorry, no.
You need to actually follow Mike. I think it's at BinTwo.
Stop.
But I'm still a remnant of the past. I'm on Twitter. My wife tells me that it's not probably the place that I should be, but I spend my time on that, as does Mike. And he's got some really, it's just really good, interesting conversations, and I think it's a really great insight into the world of an independent wine merchant. And he's not any independent wine merchant. I think 2 years running.
Only two.
2 years running, number one voted. What was it? Number one independent wine merchant in the UK.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't going to mention it.
By the leading sort of trade magazine. Is that right?
Yeah, Harper's Wine and Spirits. Yeah.
So voted by his industry peers.
Only 2 years running.
So it is. It's that serendipitous find in Padstow. If you stumble across this lovely little shop and champagne bar as well. You can have a glass.
A little bit of champagne.
Cornish sparkling wine or
that
champagne.
That too.
And it is. I think there's nothing you can beat. But usually this time of year, there's Padstow Christmas Market, Padstow Christmas Festival, and there's you can't beat the atmosphere of 200, 300 people singing Christmas carols outside Mike's shop in Padstow, BinTwo. And I think we usually wrap up the year. Mark and I think you can finish the year with a bottle of champagne, and I think there's almost no better way to celebrate the end of what is hopefully a busy season for all of us.
Oh, thank you for saying that. We love it too. I mean, if we're going to talk about my social media content, I have to pay tribute to Sean, who's in the background behind one of the cameras here now, because I get on Twitter sometimes when I've had too many Negronis.
I wasn't going to bring it up.
Well,
I was going to say you peak about 10 o'clock.
Yeah, and then it goes downhill. So once I hit the Tarquin Sea Dog barrel aged Negroni that we make in BinTwo, that's powerful stuff, and it can go downhill fast. And Sean does some mopping up behind me and says, "No, we're deleting that one, deleting that one, deleting that one." So yeah,
sorry.
Tell us about the highball.
Nice. So this is, again, super easy. So this is based upon a almost prosecco or champagne cocktail I used to make. So it's got rosemary syrup, which I'll tell you how to make. It's got clementine juice. It's got soda water, and it's got the Old Tom. And all we've done is I put a big slug of the Old Tom, so 50 ml of that in here. I've put 50 ml of fresh. So you can use orange juice or clementine juice. Whack that in. You want to do about 12.5 ml of this rosemary syrup, and then you just top it up with soda water, nice. And to make the rosemary syrup, it's very, very easy. You make a sugar syrup. So I did 60-40 ratio, so 60, so whatever you're making, you do it 60% sugar, 40% water, and then when you've made that, just whack in a few, some rosemary sprigs, leave that for like 2-3 hours. Ideally you'd leave it overnight, but you can do it in like 2 or 3 hours. Bosh that in, it's really, really nice, really refreshing.
That is lovely. It's a really, really lovely sort of summer freshener, isn't it?
Totally, and you can do it, like I said, it does work in a really nice like champagne cocktail, so you could, don't put as much gin in there, but put a bit of the rosemary syrup, a bit of clementine juice, a bit of gin, and chop up with some prosecco,
like
bit short.
In a flute or like a coupe or something.
Yeah. And it's again
Saucer,
that's really,
like a
really
champagne.
nice.
Yeah, amazing.
That's kind of fabulous, which is a nice way of us segueing out into the fabulous versatility of Tarquin and BinTwo's missing link Old Tom gin that can be drunk neat as a sipping gin. It can be drunk as a gin and tonic. It can be drunk as a hot gin and tonic. It can be drunk as a long pour in the summer. What a product. So I just want to say thank you guys for working with us on it and allowing us to take part in this collaboration and making it for us. And thank you for having made such a stunning gin in your lineup to then deny yourself the pleasure of having it yourself and allowing it to be our little thing, which is available through BinTwo.com. Cheers, folks. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Good start.